Do you feel frustrated, unprepared, confused, or lost? Well, it's time to be happy because Geography World channel is here to help. I see the comments and requests and I will act on them. Please remember to follow Geography World channel on Instagram and Facebook using the link shown on the screen. Please remember to like, share with your friends and subscribe. For persons wishing to contact me privately, you may email me at geographyworld100@gmail.com. The link will be posted below. Welcome back to Geography World channel. For this video, we'll be looking at the human environment systems on the 2016 paper. So we'll be answering question 8 to 10 on the 2016 May-June CSEC Geography paper 2. Now question 8, part A, it says study figure 1 on page 9, which shows the track of a tropical weather system that developed into Hurricane Jean during the periods 13 to 26 of September 2004, and we're expected to answer the questions that follow. So the part 1 asks us to identify the group of islands that was affected when the weather system was a hurricane. So we're going to go to question 9. And this is the weather system. Let me see if I can turn it. So this is the map of the Caribbean showing you the part of the weather system. Good. Now the first question asks that you identify the group of islands that were affected when the system was a hurricane. Good. Now the keys below here, when it's a hurricane, it's in bold. Now if you look closely, it became a hurricane on the 20 going around to the 23rd, and it goes over to the 25th to the 26th. Now the group of island that is located over this region is the Bahamas group of island. So the answer for the first question is the Bahamas. Good. Part 2 of the question asks that we state the name of the country that was affected by the storm between the 16th and the 17th of September. So the 16th, which is here, to the 17th, which is here, and this system was a tropical storm. The name of the country here is the Dominican Republic. Remember that the Dominican Republic, it shares the same landmass as Haiti, a section of the landmass as Haiti. Good. And then part 3 asks that we outline 2 changes in the weather system between the 10 and the 24th. Alright, so let me go back to the question to ensure. So it asks us to outline 2 changes in the weather system. So that's between the 19th and the 24th. Good. Now if you look carefully, the 19th, it was a tropical storm and then it became a hurricane. So it's the 19th to the 24th. So between here and here. Now 2 changes that you can explore is that the system changed from a tropical storm to a hurricane, and that the system changed the direction. So it changed from a north to a northeast, then to a south, then to a west. So it was going in a northerly direction, and it changed to a northeast, then it went south, and then it went in a westerly direction. So the direction of the system changed. Let's get back to the question. Part B asks us to describe 2 ways in which the bauxite industry contributes to each of the following types of pollution in the Caribbean. So how the bauxite industry contributes to air pollution and water pollution. Now, air pollution, it emits gases into the atmosphere. So when you look at the bauxite company, you realize that they have some really huge pipes and you can see some smoke coming from it. some of the time they have gases that are emitted into the atmosphere, right, which contributes to air pollution. And the dust particles that they get from the bauxite industry also enters the atmosphere, and it contributes to air pollution. Now, as it relates to water pollution, the water bodies, they become contaminated with metal compounds such as lead and iron and copper that is often used in the bauxite industry. Discharge of sulfuric acid into the different water system can also lead to water pollution, and sediments erode and discharge in the rivers and lakes also aid in water pollution. Part C asks us to explain 2 ways in which the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency CDEM assists member states to respond to hazards, that is before it becomes a disaster, and disasters. Now, before, which is when it is a hazard, CDEMA, they basically help by educating us about the hazard, whichever hazard it is, they educate us about it. So they tell you what to do before, during, and after, right? They coordinate they coordinate the establishment, enhancement, and they maintain maintenance of adequate emergency disaster response. So they basically develop locate sheltered areas and so forth, so that they can advise you before, right? They also secure, coordinate, and provide relevant information and updates to government and non-governmental organizations about the hazard or the disaster, right? So they provide updates to both government and non-governmental organizations about the disaster, right? And they conduct risk assessment activities. So they look at the areas that are more prone to, let's say, the negative effects of the hazard, right, as opposed to the area that would be safer. Now, when it becomes a disaster, they basically mobilize and coordinate disaster relief. So once it's a disaster is taking place, they try to go in the communities and they try to aid persons who was affected by the disasters. They provide assistance to affected states. They update government and non-governmental organizations about the status of the disaster. How many houses were destroyed? What will be the cost for repairs? Those type of information is provided by CDEMA. Now, once you're able to explain these roles properly, you should and must be able to get your fair amount of marks, 12 marks, okay? Question 9 shows us a table which summarizes the effects of Hurricane Allen on selected Caribbean countries, and we're to answer the questions that follow. So this is the table, and it shows us the countries that are affected, the number of deaths in one column, and the cost of damage in US million. So the question that follows, so we're to state the total number of persons who died as a result of the hurricane. Now what we have to do is add up the numbers here. So 6 plus 8 gives us 14, because every other country had 0. So 14 is the answer. Part 2 asks us to identify the country that suffered the greatest damage. So you look for the country that suffered the greatest damage in this column. So St. Lucia, with 235 million US, suffered the greatest damage. Part 3 asks us to determine the total cost of damage in the countries listed. So for all the countries listed, the cost for the total damage. So you're going to add 6 plus 5 plus 3 plus 100 plus 235 plus 16.3, and you should get 362.5. So the total cost for damage would be 362.5. Part 4 asks us to determine the total cost of damage in the Windward Islands listed. Now, the Windward Islands that are listed, we have St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines, and we have Grenada. So what you're going to do is add Grenada's cost for damage, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent, and you should be getting 256.6. Question B, part 1, asks us to define the term natural hazard. Now, natural hazards are extreme natural events that have the potential to threaten both human life and property. So let me go again. Natural hazards are extreme natural events that have the potential to threaten both human life and property. Now, part 2 asks that you describe 3 ways in which any one of the following hazards impacts life and property. So let's go. Now, earthquake, it can cause buildings to collapse from the tremor. It causes roads and bridges to break or damage. It can cause tsunamis that can destroy coastal settlements and property, and it can cause harm or injuries to individuals. When we talk about a volcano, we can have loss of lives or injury. We can have the buildings may be covered under layers of ash and cinder. We can have crops. The crops can be destroyed by the lava, and ashfall can cause damages to houses and other buildings. When we talk about a hurricane, the hurricane can cause death or harm to individuals. It can basically wash away cars, houses, and individuals' property, and it can cause flooding that can basically affect the settlement of coastal areas. Now, once you're able to explain any 3, remember it says this 1, so you select 1 hazard and then you describe 3 impact of that 1 hazard. Please don't sit in the exam and do 3 hazards for each, because you'll only be marked for the first one. Question C asks that part 1 asks that we explain 3 causes of deforestation in the Caribbean. Why do we have deforestation in the Caribbean? Good. Now, in the Caribbean, these are just a few of the ways or a few of the reasons why we have deforestation. So we have a good amount of forest fires in the Caribbean, which lead to deforestation. We have hurricane activities that lead to deforestation. We have agricultural related activities, lumber related activities, infrastructural development, urban development or settlement. We have mining activities, and we have tourism. So forest fires, hurricane activities, agricultural related activities, lumber related activities, infrastructural development, urban development or settlement, mining, and tourism. These are just a few of the activities that basically cause or aid with the development of deforestation in the Caribbean. Now, we're to give specific Caribbean example and explain 2 consequences of deforestation for part 2. Now, consequences we have because of deforestation, we are affected by climate change, and you can expound on some of the effect of climate change and basically link it to different areas within the Caribbean. Because of deforestation, we have an increase in soil erosion, we have an increase in flooding, we have the extinction of wildlife and habitats are lost. We have infertile soil because of deforestation. We have damages to corals. We have a loss of natural beauty. We have a large amount of sediment is being deposited into the river channels. So we're affected by climate change, soil erosion, increased flooding, wildlife is extinct, and we have a loss of habitat, infertile soil, damages to coral reef, loss of natural beauty, and large amount of sediment is deposited into the river channel due to deforestation in the Caribbean. So you're now able to link it to specific Caribbean examples. So based on the 2 consequences that you have chosen, just find a Caribbean country or 2 that is affected by these consequences, and then you can make reference to them in your explanation. Question 10 shows us a histogram which shows by region the health status of coral reefs in 2003. So we're to examine the histogram that shows us the health status of the different coral reefs, right? And then we're to answer the questions that follow. Now, part 1 asks us to identify the region that has the healthiest reef. Now, the region that had the healthiest reef would be the one with the tallest bar. So, Australia would be our answer. It is taller than the Pacific Island as well as the Coral Triangle. So, Australia would be our answer. Let's scroll down to part B. Part B asks that we determine the score that the Atlantic region earned. Now, the Atlantic region located here, so based on the bar it's above 80, and if you should draw the stroke, it's approximately 83. So the score that the Atlantic region would have earned is approximately 83. Good. Next, we're to list the region that earned an overall grade B. So grade B would be from within this region. So the countries that achieved grade B would be the Coral Triangle, Australia, and the Pacific Island. Good. So that's the Coral Triangle, Australia, and the Pacific Triangle. Everything else is in C, at grade C. All right, so let's move on to part D4. Now part 4 asks us to determine the score that was required to earn a grade A. Now, in order for you to get a grade A, you would have to get 121 or above, because it's not on the 120 line, but it's above it. So for the corals to be classified as grade A, you'd have to get 121 or above. Let's scroll down to question B. Now, question B says, use an appropriate example where to describe one measure used to reduce the harmful effect of pollution under each of the heading. So, under industrial and technological operation, right? One measure that could be used to reduce the harmful effect of pollution. Good. Now, we could reduce the emission, right? Or we could use cleaner production processes to basically reduce the harmful effect of pollution under the industrial and technological operation. What I will also do is make the listing available so that students can look at the listing after. Now, under environmental protection practices, what we can do is that we can reuse and recycle, as well as we can enforce regulations by the government. So certain rules and regulations that are enforced by the government, we can basically reinforce it. So we can remember, listen man, the government banned plastic bags in our country, so you should not be having any plastic bag. Don't throw the garbage there. So we have to reinforce the regulations set by the government. Good. Under the use of everyday material, we use biodegradable materials or wrappings, and we use organic instead of synthetic fertilizer. So we use stuff that are biodegradable instead of plastic containers, right? And we use organic instead of synthetic fertilizers. Now, as it relates to energy sources, we use energy efficient appliances so that we consume less energy, and we use alternate energy sources. So these are just a few of the pointers that you could have used to basically reduce harmful effect under the different headings. Now, point C asks that you explain 3 measures that are used to reduce greenhouse gases and coral reef degradation. Now, in order for greenhouse gas, there are certain measures that are implemented, right? So, for example, they have the recycling method, where they're trying to recycle as much as possible so that they can aid in the reduction of the greenhouse gases. They also use of different alternate source of energy, right? So they don't want to burn too much fossil fuel or too much oil, so they use alternate energy, as well as they educate the citizens about greenhouse effect. And this so far has proven good, because it, to some extent, the climate change or the greenhouse effect is slowing down, right? Because persons are more aware of how their actions are contributing to these effects, so they somewhat slow down the process. Now, as it relates to the coral reef degradation, what has happened are the measures implemented that there is a use of regulation to prevent damage to the reef. There are certain regulations, right? So there are rules and regulation installed. So when you go, for example, to the coral reef, when you're diving, before you enter the water, you are taught, you're given a set of rules to follow, right? So you cannot break off a piece of the coral unless you have to pay up, let's say, a fine. Some rules or regulations are implemented, right? You also educate. We have an education program that they use to sensitize users on the benefits and the protecting the reef. So they teach about the benefits of the reef, why you should protect it. Good. And they also monitor fishing methods to basically prevent the types which destroy the reefs. Like the dynamite fishing, they monitor the reef so that they can say, no, Mr. Jones, you can't do any form of dynamite fishing here because it's illegal. And this is where Mr. Jones would be educated, and to some extent, maybe if depending on the penalties associated with the crime, he might be fined. Good. So once you get a question like this, all you need to do is explain. I always tell students that the key to doing GA is that you have to explain your answer. You can't just list your answers, you have to explain. So once you explain, you should get your 12 marks, which will basically be good for you as you'll be on your way to getting the 24 marks.
We are at the end of this video. Thank you for watching, and please remember to like, share, subscribe, and turn on your post notification bell in order to receive more videos like these. Leave comments below suggesting topics that you would want me to present on. In the comment section below, comment the name of your school and the territory for a shout out in my next video. Until then, bye.